A journey back to 1862, a day in the life of a Confederate soldier. Welcome to tonight's special time travel. Put down your phone, snuggle into the softest corner of your sofa. Close your eyes and let your mind drift back to one of the most tense and violent periods in American history, the Civil War. Congratulations, you've just woken up. Boom, in 1862. The wind blows through the old canvas of your tent, carrying with it the smell of damp earth, wood smoke. The smell of a long night sleeping on a ground colder than your ex-girlfriend's heart. Your joints are creaking after a night of huddled under a thin wool blanket. Soak with morning dew. The good news, you've got another day to live. The bad news today, you have to walk miles with your regiment, rumored to be heading toward the battle everyone has been talking about for days. You're only 19, serving in the Union Army for about half a year. Remember last year when President Lincoln called for a 90-day draft? It was supposed to be a glorious adventure to fight the enemy and return as a hero. But now 90 days have passed, the war is dragging on, and you're stuck in a 3-year contract. Your mouth is dry, your stomach rumbles like a steamer. You reach under the mat and pull out a tin mug and an iron water jug. Inside, the water is shaking, only half the jug is left. You take a sip, just enough to wet your lips. Who knows when you'll get another drink? Some of you have collapsed from thirst along the way. Everyone knows that water is more precious than gunpowder on the march. Outside the tent, the barracks are starting to wake up. The smell of smoke, burnt coffee, and the smell of someone who hasn't showered in a month all mixed together. Your stomach growls even louder. Samuel, your tent mate, is turning over. A few years older than you, a Pennsylvania farmhand by trade. Samuel has been coughing for weeks and still keeps crawling along. What other choice is there? Good morning, he mumbles, his voice hoarse. Are we going to get a decent meal today? A useless question. A decent meal is a dream. Army rations, if they're issued in time, consist of hardtack made from flour and water, which will break your teeth if you don't soak them first. Occasionally there's salt pork, more salt than meat, and coffee if you're lucky. And coffee is the real deal here. Some people will trade cigarettes or half their rations for a cup of the bitter stuff. You pull on your boots, wincing at the dampness in your socks. They haven't dried in days and your right heel is starting to blister. But oh well, everyone else has them. You're lucky you have boots. Some people have rags wrapped around their feet. Better than the Rebs, Samuel smiled as if he could guess your thoughts. I heard they live on cornbread and other bits and pieces of junk they pick up along the way. Outside, the bugle sounded, signaling the official start of the day. You and Samuel hurriedly rolled up your blankets and set up your tents. Everything you had to fit in your backpacks or on your person. Now, after half a year of being a soldier, these actions had become a habit, whereas when you first joined the Army, you had been clumsy and didn't know what to do. The Springfield rifle weighed about 10 pounds. Add the 40-round box of ammunition, the bayonet, the water bottle, the dry rations, bag, the blanket, your personal belongings, even the communal pots and pans, or the tent cloth, all while carrying nearly 40 pounds on your shoulders. After a few miles, your shoulders were burning with pain. You joined the long line of soldiers lining up around the field kitchen. The kitchen men, all assigned soldiers, were handing out coffee and bread from a wooden barrel. You took your share, dipping the bread into the strong black coffee to soften it a bit. Take a bite, see tiny black spots, worms. But never mind free protein, the old soldier said. There was a letter last night, the freckled Jenkins happily announced. Wilson has it. This news was like pouring cold water on a summer afternoon. Everyone was excited. Letters from home were more precious than gold. It was a fragile link to the old life, where people remembered you not as an unknown soldier in a long line. You quickly finished your coffee, returned the cup, and pushed your way to Wilson, the unit secretary. He read out each name. Every time someone received a letter, his face lit up, even though it was covered in mud and smoke. Waited forever. No name. 3 weeks had passed without a letter from home. It must have gotten lost or arrived late. The postal system was terrible. Samuel had a letter. He stuffed it into his shirt, didn't open it, saved it for the evening to read alone by the firelight. There was something precious that he didn't want anyone to share, even if it meant life and death. Line up, the sergeant calls out. We're leaving in 10 minutes. The camp is in an orderly chaos. Soldiers are gathering their things and lining up. Your K company, down to about 80 men, down from 100 when they enlisted. Disease kills more than bullets, measles, dysentery, typhoid. Sweeping through the camp without mercy. You stand next to faces more familiar than brothers, the talkative Jenkins. Thompson, the old teacher with his Shakespearean sonnets. Monroe, the quiet one who plays the harmonica very well. And Samuel, who left his wife and 2 small children to join the army. The drums beat. The long column of soldiers trudges. Left, right. The familiar rhythm of an endless march. A Soldier's Day. The March of Misery and Tiny Joys, 1862. Left, right, left, right. The endless shuffle of worn-out boots becomes the rhythm of your entire miserable existence. Somewhere between the blistered feet and the chafing thighs, you've mastered the true art of soldiering, emptying your mind like an old whiskey barrel. You drift into that strange mental space where time stretches like taffy, where you can feel every aching joint and yet somehow float above your sweaty, suffering body. The late summer sun rises higher like a nosy neighbor peeking over the fence of your sanity. Its rays bake your blue wool uniform until you start to smell like an old sheep left out in the rain. Sweat trickles like tiny traitorous rivers down your back. Your wool shirt clings to your skin in ways that no shirt ever should. Between your legs, the rough fabric of your pants rubs with each step until it feels like you've been sandpapered raw. Nobody told you about this part when you signed up the glamorous, heroic grind of irritation and rashes. They promise flags, waving girls cheering, and trumpet blasts. Not swamp, butt, and bleeding heels. Water discipline, the sergeant bellows as your long column of exhausted bluecoats trudges past a sparkling little creek. Crystal clear, cool, perfect. The whole line stares at it like kids outside a candy store, but no one stops. Oh no. Can't break the sacred rhythm of the march for some silly human need like thirst. When they finally let you fill your canteens, it'll be organized and orderly, because the last thing anyone wants is 400 thirsty maniacs wrestling over a puddle. So the march goes on. Dust swirls in the air, kicked up by the unlucky saps at the front of the column. It floats back and settles on your face, your pack, your precious mouth, which now tastes like you've been licking an old barn door. Your eyes sting, your throat feels like sandpaper. But you march on, left foot, right foot, because stopping is not an option. By midday, the miracle arrives a halt. The column stops for a blessed, glorious, soul-saving rest. You collapse by the road, tearing off your pack like it's trying to murder you, and flop onto the dirt like a dead fish. Samuel drops beside you, finally pulling out his letter from home, the one he tucked into his jacket that morning like a secret treasure. His weathered face, lined far beyond his 24 years, softens as he reads. For a moment, he's not Private Samuel from Pennsylvania. He's a husband, a father, a man who had a life before this endless, miserable march. She says the corn's doing good this year, he mutters with a slow, dusty grin. And little Mary, she took her first steps. His smile cracks the dirt caked on his face. There's pride in his voice, but there's sadness too, hanging in the air like smoke. He missed that moment. First steps don't wait for Daddy to come home from war. You nod, swallowing down the lump in your throat, trying to share his joy without drowning in your own homesickness. Ohio feels like another lifetime. You wonder how the apple trees look now if your mother still sets a place for you at supper. If the neighbor girl ever read the awkward, sweaty palm letter you sent before you left. But the break is short, 20 minutes tops. Then boom, boom, boom. The drums hammer out their command and the sergeants bark everyone back into line. You help Samuel to his feet and notice how he leans a little harder on you this time. His cough is worse. He waves your concern away. Just dust, he says. Liar. You both know better. It's been weeks. And army doctors are as much use as buttons on a fish. Their cures involve mercury pills that kill you quicker, or whiskey that makes you not care for a few blessed hours. Most men prefer to suffer quietly, coughing themselves to death. The afternoon march is pure torture. Your body groans and protests like an old cart with rusty wheels. The novelty of the morning's misery has worn off. Now it's just sore muscles, bleeding blisters, and a pack that seems to have gained weight like a guilt-ridden Christmas turkey. Your once prized rifle, just another lump of iron dragging at your shoulder. You tramp through dusty little towns where pale-faced civilians peek from porches and shutters. Some wave, some offer water, some turn away silent and cold. Even in Union territory, not everyone's cheering for your side, and that stings worse than your feet. Knowing some folks wish you'd just keep marching right off the edge of the earth. By late afternoon, juicy rumor starts drifting down the line like forbidden apple pie. We're stopping early today, someone whispers. Good water up ahead. Nice ground. A ripple of hope. Early camp, real water. Maybe even dare you dream fresh meat. The official word finally comes, make camp. You hear actual sighs of relief like music to your filthy ears. The column spills off the road into a wide field, officers on horseback barking out orders. Everyone knows the drill: first defensive positions, just in case those pesky rebs show up. Then cook fires, tense gear. Then you can worry about comfort. You and Samuel drag out your tent, a joke of a thing, two sad canvas halves buttoned together and hung over a stick. Open at both ends. Barely keeps the rain off your face, but hey, better than dirt. All around you, the camp springs to life. Fires crackle, cooks holler, men laugh. And then what's this real beef? The supply wagons brought fresh meat, fresh actual cow, not salty pig rock or wormy cracker. You line up with your tin plate, eyes wide as saucers. The hunk of beef you get is tiny, leathery, and barely cooked. But who cares? It's heaven compared to salted pork and weevil stew. As evening falls, the mood shifts. Men sit in quiet little clusters, writing letters by firelight. Others gamble with cards or dice betting coffee buttons or IOUs for favors that may never be repaid. The lucky ones smoke pipes. Thompson, the old school teacher, reads Shakespeare to whoever'll listen. Monroe plays Home Sweet Home on his harmonica notes so soft and sad, they squeeze tears from your dust-crusted eyes. You and Samuel sit by a crackling fire with Jenkins, the freckled joker. Behind you, pickets guard the edges of camp, watching for rebel scouts. The war feels distant in this moment, like a bad dream that hasn't quite arrived. My pa fought the British in 1812, Jenkins mutters, poking the fire. Said the waiting was always worse than the fight. Said once the shooting started, you didn't have time to be scared. Samuel nods, coughing deep in his chest. My granddaddy fought the redcoats, he rasps. Said every man dirtied himself right before the battle, but stood firm once it began. He pauses. Guess some things never change. You've felt it too, that sick, sour fear before your first fight. The twisting guts, the bone-dry mouth. Then the odd calm when it all starts. Load, aim, fire like a machine working without you. They say this one's gonna be big, Jenkins whispers. Whole Reb army up ahead. No one answers. What can you say? Tomorrow or the next day you'll march forward. You'll fight because you must. And if luck is on your side, you'll get to do it all again. The long march into darkness, a soldier's night and day. When the sergeants shout, "Forward march," you do as you're told, not because you want to, but because in this war, personal choice is as distant a dream as a hot bath or a soft feather bed. You march because the rhythm commands you. You march because stopping means being left behind. And that's worse than the march itself. As the sky darkens and the last blush of daylight fades, camp settles into uneasy quiet. The exhaustion of the day lays heavy on every man's bones. Grumbling stops, movement slows, men wander to their tents or roll into their thin blankets by fading fires like sad, threadbare burritos. You and Samuel crawl into your pathetic excuse for a tent, a flap of canvas stretched over a stick lying head to foot to spare each other's dignity and toes. Your knapsack serves as a pillow, the buckle digging cruelly into your cheek. You stare up through the tent's open end at the wide, clear sky. Stars spatter the heavens. The same stars shine over Ohio, over your family's farm. Over the soft hills where you once chased chickens and dreams of something more exciting than farming. The thought brings both comfort and a sharp stab of loneliness. You miss home, more than you admit even to yourself. Samuel coughs a wet, rattling sound. Pneumonia, probably. You've heard that sound before in other men, and you know how it ends if left untreated. But what can you do? The army surgeon is busy slicing and sewing on men with real holes in them. A cough, not a priority, not with a battle creeping closer by the hour. If anything happens to me, Samuel says softly, almost whispering, Make sure my wife gets my things, my pay if they ever send it. The words hang in the darkness like smoke. It's not the first time you've had this talk. Every man in the company has little private insurance policies in the world's cruelest lottery. Of course I will, you reply quietly, but nothing's gonna happen to you. We'll get through this. We'll go home. Samuel doesn't answer, but his hand reaches out in the dark and grabs your ankle for a moment, a silent squeeze of thanks. That small gesture says more than words ever could. It's the kind of affection no man shows in daylight, but here in the dark it means everything. Sleep comes in short, restless bursts. The ground is as hard as a miser's heart. The thin blanket offers no warmth against the creeping night chill. All around you the camp stirs and mutters the living machinery of the regiment, never fully at rest. Men cough, groan, fart, shuffle. Somewhere nearby, a soldier wakes, screaming from a nightmare only to be calmed by gentle murmured voices. No one laughs, not here. You've all had those dreams. You drift between waking and sleeping, floating in half-real dreams. You're back home for the harvest. Then suddenly you're on the battlefield, rifle in hand, but the powder's wet, the enemy's charging, and you can't reload fast enough. Is this a memory or a nightmare? Did you really see a man's face vanish in red mist last month? Or did someone just tell the story so many times you believe you saw it? Dawn is still far away when you fully wake. Your body now runs on military time like a sad, broken clock. Samuel is sitting at the tent flap, hunched and coughing softly into his sleeve. When he sees you watching, he forces a small smile. Another day, he says, another day of marching. Another day closer to battle. Another day closer to finding out if you live or die. But also another day alive, clinging to the thin hope that someday you'll smell the apple blossoms in Ohio again. You nod and begin the daily ritual: pack the blanket, check the gear, adjust the rifle strap. There's comfort in the routine, even in misery. Familiar weight on your shoulders, familiar dust in your throat, the brotherhood of shared suffering. You are a soldier of the Union Army, summer 1862. One blue-clad speck in a sea of thousands, all trudging toward an uncertain fate. The first blush of dawn paints the sky when the bugles scream their cruel greeting. The camp stirs, groaning and creaking to life. You hoist your pack, feel the rifle heavy in your hand, the deep familiar ache in your back and shoulders. All around you, the regiment awakens like a single massive beast shaking off sleep. Left foot, right foot. The endless march resumes. Morning mist coils around your legs like ghostly fingers as you shuffle into line. Jenkins nods at you from the left, Thompson from the right. Behind you, Samuel coughs, harsh and wet, even above the shuffling feet of hundreds of men. Forward, march. The great human caterpillar lurches into motion again. Today's suffering will be special. 15 miles, they say, to close the distance to the rebel army gathering somewhere ahead. The enemy's out there, waiting. The first hour passes in silence. Each man wrapped in thoughts best left unspoken. The mist melts away as the sun climbs, revealing rolling farmland, green, fertile, peaceful. Hard to imagine this will soon be a field of death. A tap on your shoulder. You glance back. Samuel offers a hardtack biscuit, precious meager food. You shake your head, but he insists. You take it knowing what it means. Not food, but friendship. Out here, such kindness is rarer than gold. The column passes a small farmhouse. A woman and 3 children stand outside watching silently. The youngest, a girl no more than 4, lifts a shy hand and waves. You wave back, your throat tight. She looks like your sister, though your sister's older now. Time at war runs strange. Home feels like another world where clocks tick slower, or not at all. By midday, the heat returns with vengeance. Your wool uniform, cozy in the dawn chill, now feels like a mobile oven. Sweat pours, eyes sting. Your canteen is half empty. Water rules your every thought. Rumors ripple down the line like mischievous gremlins. Confederate cavalry spotted 5 miles ahead. No 10. The Rebs are dug in by the river. No, they've pulled back. Cannon fire in the distance. Or someone's imagination. The first casualty of war is truth murmurs. Thompson Shakespeare, maybe. Or just bitter wisdom. Afternoon brings new torture. The road narrows into a swampy mess. Mud sucks at your boots, thick and greedy. Each step's a battle. Some men curse, some stumble. Some lose a shoe and have to fish it out while the column surges past. Close it up, tighten the line, the sergeants bark, but it's no use. The strong men pull ahead. The sick and tired Samuel among them fall behind. You glance back and see Samuel struggling, coughing, slipping in the muck. He meets your eye for a moment, just long enough to let you know I'm trying. Then the line swallows him again. The swamp stinks, the sun blazes. Your pack grows heavier. Your gun digs deeper into your shoulder. Every step is pain. Every breath is grit. Still, say, you march on. Left foot, right foot, toward the unknown, toward history. Pickets, ghost horses, and the long night before battle. Up and down the weary line, the sergeants move like angry shepherds, shouting, pleading, dragging, occasionally kicking their stumbling sheep forward. Tighten it up, boys, close the gaps, keep moving. You've heard it 1,000 times. Out here, unity isn't a virtue, it's survival. That's lesson number 1 in soldier school: stick together or die apart. By late afternoon, exhaustion is your world. You don't think. You don't dream. You don't even feel anymore. Your life is reduced to this miserable slice of muddy road and the simple act of dragging your blistered feet forward. Your shoulders scream with every step under the cruel weight of your pack. That rifle, the one you once cradled with pride, like some elegant dance partner, now feels like a log made of pure iron strapped to your body by Satan himself. But you march, because everyone else is marching, because to fall behind means to vanish, swallowed up by the wilderness and forgotten. Men who drop from the line are sometimes found days later robbed and dead from bushwhackers, or never found at all, lost forever to the hungry gods of war. Beside you, Samuel coughs deep, raw wet. Every hacking fit bends him double, but somehow, impossibly, the stubborn fool keeps up. You've quietly offered to carry some of his gear, but pride is harder to lift than a full pack. So you say nothing. You just edge a little closer to him in the column, ready to catch him if or when he finally falls. Neither of you talks about this unspoken plan. As the sun dips low and shadows stretch long and thin across the dirt road, something strange happens. The column halts. Murmurs ripple backward. Scouts up front have spotted a Confederate patrol less than a mile away. Uh-oh. Tonight, no cozy campfires, no coffee, no hot beef surprise, which, let's be honest, was never that hot or surprising. Nope. Instead, picket duty in a dark forest, rifles loaded, nerves twitching like old fence wire. Your company gets sent to the edge of a gloomy little woods north side, where the officers think Johnny Reb might poke his greasy head through by morning. You and Samuel hunker down behind a fallen log, good cover, but also the perfect place to wonder why you ever left your peaceful farm in Ohio. Neither of you talks about tomorrow, the smoke, the yelling, the killing. Instead, you share the last crumbs of hardtack flavored delicately with dust and shoe leather and one precious, pitiful sip of water. Then you both check your rifles by feel muscle memory now after months of drills. Your Springfield musket, heavy and ugly, is loaded with a fat mini ball, a little cone of death that will splatter bone and flesh into something doctors can't fix. You touch the percussion cap, making sure it's seated right. One click, one spark, one life gone. The sun dies behind the hills. Night swallows the world whole. No moon tonight, good for hiding, bad for seeing. The forest rustles and stirs with creatures you'd rather not think about. Owls hoot, leaves whisper. Somewhere far off, water gurgles softly like a throat clearing. Every sound makes your heart kick like a mule. You take the first watch while Samuel tries to rest, not that anyone really sleeps. He coughs softly, a cracked wheeze rhythm that the trees seem to echo. You squint into the endless black seeing shapes that aren't there. Shadow men in the branches, creeping figures in the brush. The mind plays cruel tricks in darkness. Then a whisper, "Hey!" You ever wonder what they're thinking? Samuel's voice low, uncertain. The Rebs, I mean. You think they're sitting in the dark, missing home, wondering what the hell they're doing here. The question jars you. You've spent months thinking of the enemy as devils in gray. But here in this lonely dark, maybe they're just other farm boys caught in the same stupid storm. Yeah, you mutter. Most of them probably are. Farm kids like us got swept up into this mess. Samuel sighs. My wife's cousin joined the Rebs. Good man. Sat at our table every Christmas. Weird to think. Maybe I'll see him tomorrow. Through rifle sights. Neither of you says anything more. What is there to say? The hours crawl. You trade places. Samuel takes watch. You slump against the log rifle across your lap, trying to rest without really sleeping. But exhaustion wins, and with it dreams. You're back home. The fields are gold. The wheat sways gentle in the summer breeze. Then flames. Fire races across the grain. You run but can't move. Someone is screaming your name. Wake up, Samuel's urgent whisper rips you from sleep. You snap awake, ears straining. Hoof beats. Soft, careful, horses moving through the woods to your left. Not Union cavalry, they'd be behind you. These are Rebs, scouts maybe, probing your line. Samuel's already in position, musket raised. You slowly ease up beside him, hands tight on the stock heart, thudding so loud you're sure they'll hear it. You listen, 3 horses, maybe 4, slipping cautious through the black trees. A sharp crack, a twig snaps under a hoof. The horses stop. Silence stretches like a blade. You freeze, finger resting on the trigger. One squeeze, and the woods will explode. But you wait. Better to let them pass than start a shooting match in the dark with no backup. Time slows. Seconds stretch into aching hours. Then hoof beats again, fading away. They're leaving. Lucky for you. Lucky for them. You and Samuel exchange silent glances. Relief, fear, the unspoken prayer. Not tonight. Please not tonight. By the time dawn blushes the sky, you're stiff, bone-tired, wide awake. You won't sleep again today. The company officer creeps along the line, gathering quiet reports. You tell him about the horses. He nods grimly. They're out there all right, he mutters. Main rebel force, 2 miles north. Likely see 'em today. Great. You fall back into line. Not in marching column now, but in battle formation. 2 long ranks of blue stretching across an open field like human fence posts. Officers on horseback patrol behind barking orders. Out front skirmishers. The sharp-eyed, fast-footed boys sent to catch the first bullets and draw fire before the rest of you arrive. Your company's in the main line center right. A good spot to die if anyone asks. The morning air smells of damp earth and gun oil. Somewhere ahead, they wait, and you march toward them. Left foot, right foot, toward history, into the smoky maw of battle. And so the line forms a long, rippling ribbon of blue wool and iron nerve stretched across the open field. You stand shoulder to shoulder with your brothers in arms, so close you can feel Samuel trembling beside you. Is it fear, sickness? Both, probably both. You'd be trembling too if you weren't holding yourself together like an old barn door in a storm. Then the word comes. Advance. The great blue line lurches forward like some awkward, groaning beast. Step by step across the rough, clumpy ground, trying desperately to keep the formation straight like you're marching across the world's worst parade ground. Every step carries you closer to that far-off tree line and to whatever horrors are hiding in its shadowy depths. Your mouth is dry, your palms slick with sweat on the rifle's worn stock. The fear rises, not the wild, screaming kind, but the quiet, creeping kind that wraps its cold fingers around your guts. Stomach churning, bladder twitching, every color sharper than it has any right to be, the sky too blue, the grass too green, the air humming with the smell of powder and sweat and distant smoke. But this isn't your first dance with the Rebs. Fear still comes, oh yes, but now you know its tricks. You know how to choke it down, swallow it, turn it into something useful. A sharpened edge, a heightened eye. Veterans call it the edge. The ones who learn to live with it survive. The rest don't. 500 yards from the tree line and crack. A sharp shot rings out. A rebel picket taking a pot shot at the Union skirmishers up front. Then another. Then another. The quiet forest edge blossoms with little puffs of white smoke. Steady, boys! The captain bellows from behind the line. His voice is oddly cheerful, like he's herding children to Sunday school. 400 yards. The fire thickens. Bullets buzz like angry hornets overhead. Men start to fall here, there a yelp, a stumble, a body crumpling into the grass. But the line closes rank after rank, swallowing the gaps like water closing behind a stone. 300. Company halt, the command snaps like a whip. You stop planting your boots in the trampled grass. Heart pounding, rifle up. Ready position. Movement smooth from endless drill. Aim. You raise your rifle, sighting down the barrel into the smoke-cloaked shadows, where muzzle flashes flicker like fireflies from hell. Fire. Sure, the world explodes. A rolling thunder of rifles roars across the line, hundreds of Union muskets belching fire and fury in one savage, unified bark. The kick of the rifle slams into your shoulder. Smoke envelops you in a stinging fog that smells of sulfur and sweat and fear. Through the swirling haze, you glimpse figures in gray, stumbling, falling, vanishing among the trees. Some don't rise. Low debris person. You bite the cartridge, pouring powder down the barrel. Ramrod down. Minia ball seated tight. Cap the nipple. Your hands move fast, 30 seconds for a seasoned man. 30 long seconds when you're helpless meat, waiting for the next rebel shot. Aim fire. The line roars again, another sheet of flame, another volley ripping into the woods. The noise is deafening now, like being trapped inside the world's angriest thunderstorm. Screams, shouts, the deadly whine of balls slicing the air. Your ears ring. Your nose stings. You fight to breathe through the smoke and the panic. Men fall around you. Jenkins, the freckle-faced joker, takes a bullet to the chest. He jerks, staggers, crumples. No time to help. No time to grieve. The line closes. The next command is already on its way. Load, aim, fire. That's battle's grim math. One man down the line, ripples shut, the guns keep talking. Samuel's still beside you. His face pale as milk, but steady, lips tight, eyes fierce. He catches your gaze between shots. No words, no smile. Just a look that says, still here. Still breathing. For now, the chaos dances on. They're a Confederate charge on the left, scattered by Union cavalry sweeping in a mad dash of sabers and smoke. They're a rebel officer, proud fool on a white horse sword raised high, before he's swallowed by a hurricane of bullets. The regimental flag topples as its bearer is shot. Instantly, another man grabs it, waving it defiantly like an angry fist at death itself. Time means nothing here. Minutes, hours. You've no idea. Your whole world is load aim, fire, load aim, fire. The barrel grows hot, too hot to touch, but you cradle it anyway. What else can you do? And then, boom! A new ugly voice enters the battle, the low throat-ripping roar of artillery. Confederate cannon from the north. You hear the shells screaming in a sound like God tearing the sky apart. The first shots fall short, great fountains of dirt and stone erupting in no man's land. But they're getting closer. Boom! Another shell, this one hits close. The ground leaps. You hit the dirt without thinking, heart hammering. Shouts, smoke, fragments of earth and iron raining down. You stagger to your feet. 3 men gone from your company, vaporized or broken in a blink. A hole in the line where friends once stood. The rebel guns pour fire like rain. The blue line bends, wavers under the twin storms of musket and cannon. Eyes dart to the officers. Where's the order? What do we do? Then it comes. Fall back to the tree line. Retreat, the hardest, deadliest maneuver in war. Turn your back, break formation, and you die. But this is no rout. The sergeants keep the men moving backward, step by step, firing as they go, covering each other, weaving a wall of lead to hold off the rebels. Samuel stumbles. A shell blast nearly knocks him flat. His face is gray with sickness and terror, but still he moves. Still he fights. You grab his arm, steady him. Together you limp for the sheltering woods. At last, trees. Cover. The battered regiment reforms under the green canopy. Breathing, bleeding, still alive. Behind you the battle rages till dusk. Push and pull. Attack and counterattack. A stalemate smeared in smoke and screams. No ground gained. No victory claimed. Just the endless chewing of men and metal. By nightfall the dead and the broken lie thick upon the field. Your company, Company K, counts its cost. 12 gone. Killed, wounded. Jenkins dead in the grass. Thompson legs shattered by a ball carted to the rear on a stretcher. Back in the field hospital, if you can call that muddy charnel house a hospital, the butchers work by lamplight. You hear the dull whine of saws slicing bone. Smell the bitter reek of chloroform and fresh blood. The lucky ones are knocked out cold. The unlucky awake staring wide-eyed into the blade. Men groan, scream, pray. Tomorrow you think, tomorrow you'll march back into that hell. But tonight you breathe. You live. For now. Another day of the long road of war. Some of the wounded are luckier or perhaps unluckier, depending how you see it. A slug of whiskey, a leather strap to bite down on, and the bone saw does its grim work. No chloroform, no mercy, just the quick, brutal necessity of battlefield surgery. You and Samuel sit side by side at the edge of the camp, rifles in your laps, too drained to speak, too wired by the aftershock of battle to sleep. The stars begin to prick through the smoky sky above you, the same cold stars that hang over Ohio, over Pennsylvania, over homes you both long to see again. For tonight you are alive. You have that much. This is the truth the posters back home never told you. This is the life they sold in glory and flags and drums hours, days of dull, hungry slogging, blistered feet in dry canteens, interrupted by bursts of pure, howling terror. This isn't romance. This isn't adventure. This is survival. A slow, grinding test of patience, muscle, nerve. But you are one of the lucky ones. You lived through the day. You wipe your rifle clean, check your cartridges still good, and lean back on your pack. Samuel coughs beside you, wheezing softly. You glance at him in the starlight, pale, sweaty, shaking. He won't last long like this, but what can be done? You close your eyes. Try not to think about tomorrow. You've learned not to look that far ahead. Tomorrow could mean another march, another battle, another friend left bleeding in the dirt. Best to think only of the next sunrise. And for tonight, it's enough. You're alive. But dawn waits for no soldier. You wake with a jolt, the damp earth cold against your back, mist curling low over the camp. Around you, men stir, groaning stiff after sleeping in the dirt. The smell of powder and sweat hangs heavy in the air. Yesterday's fight already feels like a bad dream. and yet your ears still ring with the echoes. Samuel shifts beside you. His cough is worse, deep, wet, tearing. His forehead gleams with sweat despite the morning chill. You lay a hand on his shoulder. He flinches but forces himself upright, biting back a groan. "I'm fine," he rasps before you can speak. "Just need to keep moving." But you both know he's lying. Pneumonia, exhaustion, a thin man pushed to his limits. But there's no mercy for weakness here. The column moves today, and any man who can't march will be left behind in the field hospital. And every soldier knows some men who go to hospital don't come back. Not because of wounds, but because of infection fever, slow death under the saw or the needle. The regimental surgeon appears moving grimly down the line. Dr. Morris in his filthy coat, the creases of his hands stained dark from old blood that soap can no longer touch. He kneels by Samuel, listens to his chest with a battered stethoscope. His face gives away nothing. "Pneumonia," he says at last. "Like saying the sky is blue. You should be in hospital." Samuel stiffens. "I can march, Doc. Just something for the cough. I'll be fine." Morris sighs. He's heard this before. Every man says it. Pride is the first medicine on any battlefield. From his bag comes a small glass bottle, thick dark liquid sloshing inside. "Laudanum," he says quietly. "Couple drops when the cough gets bad. Not too much. You know why." You nod. You've seen men drink the bottle dry, staggering like drunks begging for more. But it works. Laudanum dulls the pain, silences the lungs. For a while. Morris moves on. Dozens more to see. Not enough time, not enough medicine, never enough. Around you the camp wakes. Men roll blankets, sling packs, check rifles. The stretcher cases, poor devils, have already been carted to the church-turned-hospital nearby. Those who can't walk but won't be left behind ride in the wagons, groaning with each jolt of the wheels. Rumors float on the morning mist. Where are you headed today? Toward the front to join a bigger force, or pulling back to safer ground? No one knows. No one but the officers, and they keep their secrets close. You gnaw at a slab of hardtack, chipped tooth, be damned, softened a little in bitter coffee. Coffee, the last holy thing in this damned army. Some men would trade a day's rations for a good cup. You understand why. Hot, dark, comforting. A little taste of home. Across the fire, Monroe plays his harmonica. A quiet tune, sad, sweet. Out of place amid the bustle of morning routine. A ghost of what you once were. That's mail call comes, Wilson's voice, the company clerk. A small cheer rises. Letters from home gold among the mud and fear. For once your name is called. A letter from your mother 3 weeks old. You don't open it yet. You tuck it close inside your jacket. A treasure to save for when you need it most. Samuel gets nothing this time, but he doesn't notice. He's too busy trying not to fall over. The companies form up. Captain Harrington Young, sharp, clean as a blade, paces the line inspecting. His gaze pauses on Samuel. "Private Matthews, are you fit to march?" His voice is flat, no pity. Samuel straightens, wincing. "Yes, sir." Harrington stares a moment longer, then nods once. "Stay to the rear. If you can't keep pace, report to the surgeon's wagon. A kindness as far as any officer dares." Then the drums roll. The old familiar beat. and like some weary snake, the column moves. Today's march is slower, more careful. Yesterday's fight stole the fire from men's legs. The cocky grins are gone. In their place, silence, grit, a quiet dread. The land bears war's wounds, fences broken for firewood, empty fields untended, barns fallen quiet. Once in a while a farmhouse door creaks open, watchful eyes staring at the army passing by. A woman waits in one yard, bucket of water, dipper in hand, offering drinks to blue-coated strangers, rare kindness. When you reach her, you sip gratefully the cool taste of life itself. She nods silent, her face drawn pale. A widow maybe, or soon to be. You hand back the dipper, whisper thanks, march on. Step by step, left foot, right foot, dust rising in choking clouds. Head more war, more killing, more dying. But behind you, Ohio, Pennsylvania, home. And the hope that someday, somehow you'll see it again. Encampment settling into uneasy slumber. Somewhere nearby, a man snores loudly. Another mutters in his sleep. The fire pops and cracks, sending faint sparks skyward. Beyond the immediate ring of light, the camp fades into darkness. Rows of silent tents, the glint of bayonets in the moonlight, the occasional silhouette of a guard pacing slowly at the perimeter. You roll onto your side and watch Samuel, whose breath comes in shallow, ragged gas. Even in the dim light, you can see how much worse he's gotten. The flush of fever has replaced the pallor. His lips are dry and cracked. His uniform, damp with sweat, clings to his thin frame. You want to believe he'll pull through, that he'll wake stronger tomorrow, ready to march again. But in your gut, you know the truth. Men don't usually come back from this. Not out here. Not with only a bottle of laudanum between them and death. You lie awake long into the night, staring up at the tent canvas overhead, hearing Samuel cough and breathe, beside you, each sound carving new worry into your heart. There's nothing glorious about war, only this, the long quiet, waiting in the dark, hoping a friend doesn't die before dawn. The morning comes with pale gold light and a heavy silence. You're already awake when Samuel stirs, a weak groan escaping his lips. He tries to sit up, but immediately collapses back, coughing violently. You reach for the laudanum, just a few drops left, but he waves it away. No more, he rasps. I can't feel my hands. You move quickly, pushing out of the tent and calling for help. Dr. Morris arrives within minutes, his coat wrinkled, his eyes red from too little sleep and too many patients. He kneels beside Samuel and listens to his chest again, but this time he doesn't hide his expression. His lungs are full, he says grimly. We'll get him to the surgeon's wagon. If he makes it through the next 2 days, he might have a chance. You help carry Samuel, his arms slung over your shoulders, his feet dragging. He doesn't protest, doesn't speak. That silence frightens you more than anything. At the surgeon's wagon, Dr. Morris gives Samuel a shot of morphine, stronger than laudanum, meant to ease the pain, if not cure the cause. Samuel slumps into a fitful sleep as the wagon is prepared to move. I'll check on him after the march, you promise. Morris doesn't answer. He just turns to the next soldier, already calling out for an assistant to bring clean bandages. Later that morning, the regiment falls in. You take your place in the line rifle over your shoulder pack on your back. but a weight heavier than any gear presses on your chest. Samuel is not beside you. His absence is louder than a drumbeat. The march today is short. You're positioning near the front lines in preparation for what everyone now openly calls the big fight. Officers bark orders. Engineers dig trenches. Artillery is positioned on the hills. You keep glancing back toward where the hospital wagons are clustered under a grove of trees. But there's no sign of movement, no news. That night after roll call, you find a moment to slip away. You make your way back toward the medical tents, weaving through the sea of soldiers. A nurse recognizes you and silently points to one of the wagons. You climb in. Samuel lies there swaddled in blankets, his face sunken in gray. For a moment you fear you're too late, but then his eyes flutter open. "Thought I heard you coming," he whispers with the ghost of a smile. You hang in there, you say, kneeling beside him. "Just a few more days. We'll go home. We'll see Emma and your wife and all the rest." He tries to laugh, but it turns into a rattle. "You're a terrible liar." You sit beside him for a long time, holding his hand in the dark. Samuel dies at dawn. They bury him beneath an oak tree near the field hospital, his name etched into a wooden cross. You leave a piece of hardtack beside the grave, a quiet token, a soldier's offering. Later that day, when the regiment marches north to battle, you take your place once again, rifle in hand, back straight. One more blue uniform among the thousands. The war isn't over, not for you, not yet. But when it is, when the last volley echoes into silence and the flags are lowered, Samuel's name will live in your memory as clear as any hero carved into stone. Not because he was brave in battle, though he was, but because he marched until he couldn't. Because he laughed when he could have cried. Because he gave you a piece of hardtack when he barely had the strength to walk. And because when it was his time, he didn't beg or curse or cry out. He just went like so many others quietly into the dark. But you remember, and you always will, jolt and stumble as you and another soldier navigate the tangled forest floor. His face is white with pain, teeth clenched, one hand gripping the edge of the stretcher, hard enough to turn his knuckles pale. You murmur encouragement as you go, though the words feel hollow. What can you promise him except that he might live to see another dawn? By the time you reach the regimental encampment, sweat is soaking your uniform. Your arms burn with fatigue, and your legs threaten to buckle with every step. But you keep going, because you must, because someone once did the same for another man. This is how soldiers survive, not by strength alone, but by holding each other up when strength runs out. The wounded man is delivered to the field hospital, his fate now in the hands of the overworked, grim-faced surgeons. You catch a glimpse of the doctor bending over him, bloodied apron pulled taut, sleeves rolled high. The faint metallic tang of blood and antiseptic floats in the humid air. As you step back into the open, a familiar voice calls your name. It's Monroe, the harmonica player, his instrument tucked into his belt for once. His expression is tight, unreadable. "Letter came for you," he says, handing over an envelope. Your heart stutters. It's from Sarah Samuel's wife. You hesitate, staring at the folded paper. She can't know yet. The letter must have been written weeks ago. Your thumb runs across the seal, and for a moment the war vanishes. You are home again, sitting by the hearth, listening to quiet laughter. But then reality rushes back. You tuck the letter away unopened. Not yet, not here. Not while the stink of powder and fear lingers in your nostrils. Monroe watches you for a moment longer before speaking softly. "How's Samuel?" You glance toward the distant line of wagons where the sick and wounded are carried to safety or death. "Gone to hospital," you say simply. "Bad off, real bad." He nods. Nothing more needs to be said. The rest of the day is spent fortifying your position. Men dig shallow rifle pits, stack logs and earth into crude breastworks. Artillery is dragged into place by sweat-drenched teams of horses. Officers confer in low voices, maps spread across the hood of a wagon. A big fight is coming. You can feel it like a storm on the horizon. The air heavy charged. The smell of pine and fresh earth thick in your nostrils. At dusk, rations are issued: salt pork, hardtack, and the last of the coffee. You chew mechanically, taste dulled by exhaustion. Around you, men settle in for the night. Some write letters home. Some mend torn clothing. Some simply sit and stare at nothing at all. You pull out Sarah's letter at last. The paper is soft and worn from the journey, the ink slightly smudged. "My dearest Samuel," it begins. You swallow hard. She writes of home, the weather, the garden, the neighbor's new foal. Of the child she carries growing stronger each day. Of how she prays for his safe return. Your eyes blur. She does not know he lies fevered and gasping in the back of an army wagon miles from this battlefield, and a lifetime from the simple joys she describes. You fold the letter carefully and place it in your breast pocket. You will write to her tomorrow or the next day, when you know more, when there is news to give, when you are ready to break her heart. The moon rises full and bright, casting silver light across the quiet camp. Somewhere nearby, Monroe plays a low, mournful tune on his harmonica. The familiar notes of Shenandoah drift through the night. You sit alone by the dying fire rifle across your knees, watching the sparks spiral into the sky. Tomorrow may bring battle. Tomorrow may bring death. But tonight you remember Samuel's crooked grin, his quiet courage, his fierce determination to keep marching no matter what. And you make a silent vow. When this war ends, if you live to see its end, you will find Sarah. You will place this letter in her hands. You will tell her the truth about her husband's last days. And you will never ever forget. You move through your own routine with practiced ease, cleaning the barrel of your rifle, checking the fit of the bayonet, tightening straps, adjusting the contents of your haversack so nothing rattles. Every small preparation feels important now, as if one loose cartridge or ill-fitting buckle might somehow tip the balance between life and death. Outside, the fog hangs thick and low over the fields. The distant rumble of artillery carries faintly on the still air, a grim reminder that this quiet will not last. Soon the world will erupt into smoke, fire, and screaming chaos. The order comes to fall in. The company forms into ranks with the familiar clatter of gear and low murmurs of readiness. Davis stands beside you, pale but steady, his eyes wide with apprehension. You give him a brief nod, offering silent reassurance. Captain Harrington appears on horseback, flanked by his lieutenants. His face is drawn and serious, the weight of command pressing heavily on his young shoulders. "Men," he begins, raising his voice to carry over the assembled company, Today we advance on the enemy position dug in along the ridge. Our orders are clear. Take the ground, hold the ground. Other regiments are moving in concert with us. We are part of the larger push that may decide this sector. He pauses, scanning the line. His gaze lingers on you briefly before moving on. Stay with your comrades, keep formation, watch for the colors, and do your duty as you have before. No mention of glory or victory or the righteousness of the cause. Only duty, only survival. May God watch over you all. With that, the officers take their places. The regiment steps off the line, moving forward into the gray morning. The march to the assembly point is silent except for the crunch of boots on damp ground and the occasional low command. Every man knows what waits ahead. At the edge of the field, the regiment halts, forming into battle lines as the fog begins to thin, revealing the enemy position, a series of earthworks along the crest of a low ridge, bristling with rifles and cannon. The Confederate line. You swallow hard, the taste of iron in your mouth. Your heart thuds in your chest, your palms slick on the rifle stock. Around you, men shift restlessly, adjusting straps, tightening grips. Then comes the order advance. The line moves forward slowly, deliberately across open ground. The world narrows to the space in front of your feet, the sound of your own breathing, the weight of the rifle in your hands. A cannon booms. The first shell screams overhead, bursting in the rear. Shouts from behind tell you some men are down already. You keep moving. Rifle fire crackles from the ridge, the deadly zip and whine of bullets filling the air. Men stumble, fall. Gaps open in the line and close again as comrades shift to fill them. Steady, boys, the captain calls. Keep your line. Davis is still beside you, his face pale but his step steady. His rifle clenched tightly in both hands. Closer now, you can see the earthworks clearly, the dark shapes of enemy soldiers firing from behind them. Halt, ready, aim, fire. The regiment's first volley crashes out a thunderous roar that sends smoke rolling across the field. You reload automatically, your hands working on instinct fingers, tearing open the cartridge, ramming the charge, capping the nipple. Advance. The line moves again, stepping over the fallen. The world shrinks to smoke, noise, heat. The scream of shells, the flash of musket fire, the groans of the wounded. A shell explodes nearby, knocking you flat. Dirt showers over you, ringing in your ears. You scramble up, heart-hammering rifle still in hand. Davis is down, curled on the ground, clutching his leg. Get up, you shout, grabbing his arm. He cries out in pain but rises, limping heavily. You half support him as the line surges forward. At the edge of the Confederate works now. Bayonets fixed, faces contorted with fear and fury, men screaming, charging, fighting hand to hand. You lunge forward, driving your rifle's bayonet into the earthwork, firing point blank at a shadowed figure behind it. Chaos all around. Men grappling, stabbing, falling. The reek of gunpowder and blood thick in the air. Somewhere the regimental flag waves a rallying point in the confusion. You grab Davis, dragging him toward the color guard, trying to keep him on his feet. His face is gray blood soaking his trouser leg, but he's conscious, breathing alive. Fall back, the order comes suddenly. Regroup. The line pulls away from the works, gathering survivors, covering the retreat with scattered shots. You stumble backward, half carrying Davis, heart pounding, head spinning. The smoke thins as you reach the rear lines, the Confederate fire slackening. The regiment has failed to take the ridge, but you're alive. For now. By dusk, the survivors are back in camp, exhausted, filthy, silent. The cost has been high. You find a place near the fire, easing Davis down beside you. His wound has been bandaged, his face pale but calm. Did we win? He asks weakly. You shake your head. No, but we lived. He manages a faint smile. That's enough for today. It is. You lean back against your pack, the fire flickering low. Around you, the camp murmurs with the quiet sounds of men tending wounds, cooking, writing letters home. Somewhere in the darkness, Monroe's harmonica begins to play soft, slow, mournful. You close your eyes, feeling the letter from home in your pocket, the pressed violet still safe inside. Tomorrow will bring another march, another fight, another test of endurance. But for tonight, you are alive. And that is enough. Bellows, his voice raw from shouting. Prepare to charge. A ripple of unease moves down the line. The word charge strikes fear into even the most seasoned soldier. It means leaving the relative cover of your current position and running headlong into enemy fire, hoping sheer momentum and aggression will overwhelm the defenders before too many of you are cut down. Captain Harrington relays the order with grim certainty. Company K, fix bayonets. Metal clicks and snaps fill the air as every man locks cold steel onto the muzzle of his rifle. You glance at Davis. His hands shake, but he gets the bayonet fixed. His eyes meet yours, wide with fear. You give him the briefest nod. Nothing more needs to be said. You both know what this means. On my command, Harrington's voice cuts through the crackle of musketry and the boom of distant cannon. Company forward. The order spreads down the line. Charge, aim. A roar rises from hundreds of throats as the regiment surges forward, breaking from cover and rushing up the slope toward the Confederate earthworks. The enemy fire intensifies, rifles crack in rapid volleys. Cannon belch, canister shot that rips swaths through the charging bluecoats. Men fall screaming, clutching shattered limbs or collapsing wordlessly. You run, lungs burning, heart hammering in your chest, the ground rushing by under your boots. The smell of powder and blood fills your nostrils. You hear the whine of bullets snapping past your head, the screams of the wounded and dying around you. Davis is still at your side, panting, stumbling but keeping pace. The Confederate works loom closer, dozens of grim, dirt-smeared enemy faces glaring down over rifle barrels. One fires at you, point blank. Something hot slashes past your arm, tearing your sleeve, but you don't slow. With a final desperate yell, you and the survivors of Company K crash into the earthworks. The world dissolves into chaos. Bayonets, thrust, and slash rifles are fired at impossible range. Men grapple hand to hand in the choking smoke and dust. A Confederate soldier lunges at you from behind a log, young, beardless, his eyes wild. You parry his bayonet, twisting your rifle and driving the stock into his face. He collapses backward, blood pouring from his broken nose. Beside you, Davis fires wildly, his shot dropping a gray-clad figure who was climbing onto the works. His eyes are wide with shock, but he's alive. So are you. For now. Gradually, painfully, the momentum shifts. More Union soldiers pour over the works. The Confederate defenders, outnumbered and outflanked, begin to fall back, melting away into the woods beyond the ridge. The order goes up, cease fire, but the noise and chaos continue for long moments before the battle finally ebbs. You stand there, chest heaving, looking over the shattered field. Bodies lie thick along the slope, blue and gray alike. The air stinks of powder, blood, and sweat. Groans rise from the wounded scattered among the fallen. The ridge is yours. Captain Harrington appears hatless, face smeared with dirt and powder residue, but upright and unharmed. He shouts orders, set pickets, tend the wounded, regroup the companies. You look for Davies. He's sitting on the ground, trembling, staring at his bayonet as if seeing it for the first time. He's alive, unhurt, beyond a graze on his cheek. You did well, you say hoarsely, clapping his shoulder. You held up. He nods slowly, blinking like a man waking from a dream. As the sun sinks toward the horizon, the survivors of the regiment settle onto the hard-won ridge. The dead are gathered for burial, the wounded carried to the rear. Monroe plays his harmonica again, soft, low notes full of grief and relief. You sit beside Davis, cleaning your rifle, your body aching from exhaustion and strain. Samuel's absence weighs on you. If he'd been here, he might have shared a quiet word, a grim joke, a nod of understanding. Thompson's fate remains unknown. Your hand drifts to your pocket, the letter from home, the pressed violet still safe inside. A small, fragile link to another world far from this place of death and struggle. Tonight you'll eat what food you can find, drink what water there is, and sleep under the stars if sleep comes at all. Tomorrow, more marching, more fighting, but for today you survived. And in this war, that is the only victory that truly matters. Thigh missing bone and major arteries. He waves off help with typical stubbornness, insisting on remaining close to his men until the worst of the wounded have been cared for. Blood soaks his trouser leg, but he stays upright, barking orders and encouragement as the wounded are gathered. Colonel Jennings is less fortunate. Though he survived the fall from his dead horse, his left arm dangles uselessly shattered by a mini-ball. He's seated on an upturned crate, now pale but composed, giving instructions to the adjutant, who scribbles hurried notes. Whatever faults he may have had as a political appointee, the man has faced fire bravely. You and Davis move among the bodies, turning over the fallen in search of the living. Now and then, a faint moan or feeble hand movement signals that a man is not yet beyond help. Some are past saving their wounds too terrible, their life ebbing fast. To these you offer water or a last word of comfort. You learn quickly to avoid looking too closely at faces, lest you recognize a friend or comrade you had spoken with just hours before. Davis kneels beside a young Confederate boy no older than 16, his gray jacket stained dark with blood from a belly wound. The boy clutches at Davis's sleeve with surprising strength, his lips moving soundlessly. Davis looks to you helpless. Water, you say softly, give him a drink. The boy sips greedily, then falls back, his eyes staring upward at the sky that now seems impossibly blue and peaceful above this slaughter. His hand slackens, his last breath rattles out, and Davis jerks back as if burned. You lay a hand on his shoulder. You did what you could. His face twists and he looks away quickly, swallowing hard. His hands are smeared with the boy's blood. The battlefield stretches around you, a grim tapestry of fallen men, smashed equipment, shattered rifles. Here and there, groups of prisoners sit under guard, dazed and silent. A few wounded Confederates groan softly, waiting their turn for the surgeon's attention. The dead are everywhere, slumped over logs, sprawled in the mud, heaped where volleys or explosions took entire clusters of men. The cost of the ridge is plain to see. A courier rides up splattered with mud, bearing orders from brigade. The regiment is to hold the captured position while the rest of the line consolidates. Digging tools are passed out. What survivors can be spared begin the grim work of fortifying the blood-soaked ground against the inevitable counterattack. Shovels bite into the earth beside the bodies of friends and enemies alike. You take a moment to check your gear. Your canteen is nearly dry. Your cartridge box holds only a few rounds. The bayonet on your rifle blade is nicked, stained dark. You clean it automatically, hands moving by habit, mind numb. Nearby, Davis sits staring into nothingness, his face blank, his body slumped in exhaustion. You sit beside him. You did well today, you say quietly. You stood when others ran. You're still breathing. That's what matters. He doesn't answer, but he hears. His eyes flick toward you for a moment, then drop again to the dirt. As the afternoon wears on, the distant sound of battle fades. The wounded are finally cleared to the rear, the dead gathered for burial. Small wooden markers are already being carved and hammered into the ground. Some graves will remain forever nameless, marked only as unknown. The ridge is secure for now. You find a quiet moment to pull out your mother's letter again. The delicate pressed violet still tucked between the pages. You stare at it, this fragile symbol of home and life beyond war, and wonder if you'll ever see that place again, or if this hill of death and ruin will be the last ground you ever stand upon. A voice calls. The captain wants all sergeants to report. You rise stiffly, muscles aching, fatigue settling in like iron weights. Davis stirs beside you. Come on, you say, offering him a hand up. There's still work to do. The war isn't over. The ridge may have fallen, but the campaign rolls on. More battles, more marches, more hardship await. But for now, for this one hard-fought, blood-soaked day, you have survived. And that in this endless war is the greatest victory of all. Quarrel into lethal conflict. You wonder who they were, their names, their homes, the families they left behind. Did they have sweethearts waiting with hope or dread as Emma waits for you? Were they farmers, teachers, clerks, as you and your comrades were before this madness consumed your lives? The war has reduced you all to simple things. Men with rifles driven by orders, luck, fear, and willpower. A flicker of movement in the darkness draws your attention, a sentry-changing position along the line, his silhouette briefly outlined against the dim glow of a lantern far to the rear. Otherwise, the night holds its uneasy silence, broken only by the distant murmur of wounded men and the occasional sharp crack of a nervous picket's rifle. You reach into your pocket and touch the crumpled envelope containing your mother's letter and the pressed violet. Its fragile petals are a reminder that somewhere beyond this shattered landscape, life goes on. Apple trees bloom, children laugh, church bells ring. A different world from the mud, blood, and death that fill your waking hours. When sleep finally comes, it is shallow and restless. Your dreams are a disjointed tapestry, Samuel coughing and feverish reaching for you with eyes gone dim. Davis standing wide-eyed in the smoke, his bayonet red with blood. The Confederate soldier whose life you ended staring back at you with terrible clarity. Home drifts into these dreams as well. The warmth of the kitchen, the scent of hay in the barn. Emma's smile, but they twist and change, mingling with the nightmare of battle, until you wake again, heart pounding, unsure of where or when you are. The gray light of false dawn creeps over the camp. Men stir muttering softly as they shake off sleep and prepare for another day of war. The air smells of damp earth and spent powder of smoke and sweat and old blood. Somewhere down the line, a sergeant curses as he tries to rekindle a reluctant fire. Captain Harrington, leaning heavily on his makeshift crutch, limps past your position. His face is pale but resolute. "Orders will be coming soon," he mutters. "Get your men ready." Davis sits up slowly, rubbing his eyes and flexing his stiff fingers. The boy is pale, but the tremor in his hands is gone, replaced by a soldier's grim acceptance. You offer him a piece of hard tack, and he takes it without complaint. You scan the faces of the others around the dying fire. Monroe Reynolds, the two older privates whose names you barely remember. Each carries the same weary determination. You realize with quiet certainty that these men, these battered survivors of Company K, have become your family in this strange, terrible world. Their fates are tied to yours as yours is to theirs. A distant bugle sounds sharp and clear in the morning air. Movement stirs along the entire Union line as couriers ride out orders clutched in gloved hands. Soon you will know if today brings another assault, another ridge to take at the cost of blood and life, or if by some miracle the enemy has slipped away in the night. For now there is only waiting. Waiting, watching, breathing the heavy scent of the battlefield, feeling the weight of the bayonet at your side, the letter in your pocket, the knowledge that you are still alive when so many are not. And in that quiet moment before the next command, before the next test of courage and endurance, you close your eyes and whisper a silent promise to survive, to see home again, to return to the life that waits beyond this hell, if the war will let you. Even if the faces of the dead march beside you forever. Personal quarrel to kill one another in fields far from home. When sleep finally comes, it's deep and dreamless. The body's defense against the mind's tendency to replay the day's horrors. You wake only once during the night, roused by the sound of Davis crying quietly beside you. You pretend not to hear, granting him the privacy to process his grief and shock in his own way. By morning, he'll have composed himself again, putting on the mask of stoicism that soldiers learn to wear. But for now in the darkness, he's still partly the boy who left home seeking adventure and glory only to find the brutal reality of war. Dawn breaks with a light rain falling, turning the battlefield's churned earth to mud and washing the blood into the soil. The expected order to advance doesn't come. Confederate forces have indeed withdrawn during the night, abandoning their second line and falling back to stronger positions several miles distant. The immediate battle is over, though the larger campaign continues. The regiment spends the day recovering, burying the dead, improving defenses, in case of counterattack, replenishing ammunition. and supplies. Letters are written to families of the fallen A task that falls to officers, but that often requires input from comrades who witnessed a man's final moments. It's a grim duty, but an important one. Families cling to details of how their loved ones died seeking meaning, or at least closure in the circumstances of their loss. You find yourself appointed acting sergeant for what remains of your squad, the previous sergeant having been among those killed during the charge. It's a field promotion born of necessity rather than formal recognition, but it carries real responsibilities organizing the men, conveying orders, reporting to Lieutenant Parker, who has temporarily assumed command of the company in Captain Harrington's partial incapacitation. The new role keeps you busy throughout the day, leaving little time for reflection on yesterday's events. Perhaps that's a blessing. The mind can only process so much horror at once, and sometimes the merciful thing is to focus on immediate practical tasks rather than dwelling on the larger questions of life, death, and war. By evening, a kind of normalcy has reasserted itself within the regiment. Tents are pitched in orderly rows. Cook fires burn, producing the usual unappetizing but filling fare. Men clean weapons, mend clothing, write letters home. The surface routine of military life continues, though beneath it runs the undercurrent of yesterday's violence and the knowledge that similar experiences likely await in the days ahead. Mail arrives unexpectedly, a welcome surprise that immediately lifts the regiment's collective mood. Among the letters is one addressed to Samuel, forwarded from another unit, before the mail clerks learned of his evacuation. You take custody of it, adding it to your pack alongside the letter you've drafted to his wife, explaining his condition and whereabouts. There's nothing for you this time, but Davis receives a package, a small parcel, wrapped in brown paper and string. He opens it with the eagerness of a child at Christmas revealing home-baked cookies, carefully packed to minimize breakage during their long journey. Though slightly stale, they're still a luxurious change from Army rations. Davis shares them without hesitation, passing the package around the fire so each man can take one. It's a small gesture, but a significant one. An affirmation of the bonds that have been forged and strengthened by yesterday's shared danger. Even Monroe, still unusually quiet since the battle, accepts a cookie with a nod of thanks. As darkness falls completely, rain continues to patter softly on the tent canvas above you. The sound is almost soothing, a natural counterpoint to the lingering memories of yesterday's gunfire and screams. Davis lies nearby, already asleep despite the early hour, his body still recovering from the physical and emotional demands of combat. You stay awake a while longer, using the faint light of a sheltered candle to write in the small pocket diary you've maintained since the beginning of your service. The entry is brief, just the date, location, and a few words about the charge and its aftermath. Not because you lack thoughts or feelings about the experience, but because some things defy expression in written language, belonging instead to the silent understanding shared by those who were there. Outside, the rain falls steadily on the sleeping camp, on the fresh graves of the fallen, on the abandoned Confederate positions, and on the countryside beyond, where ordinary life continues despite the war that has temporarily transformed this peaceful landscape into a place of death and suffering. Tomorrow will bring new orders, new marches, perhaps new battles. But for tonight at least, there is the small mercy of rest. Morning comes with the familiar sound of bugles and drums, calling the regiment to attention. The rain has stopped during the night, but the ground remains sodden, turning the camp into a quagmire of mud that clings to your boots with each step. You rouse Davis, who wakes with the momentary confusion of someone who has briefly forgotten where he is, before reality settles back onto his young shoulders like a heavy cloak. Ord came through while you were sleeping. You inform him as he struggles to fully wake. We're moving out in an hour. The Confederates have fallen back to a defensive line along the river, and we're to join the pursuit. The news is met with a resigned nod. After yesterday's battle, the prospect of another march and possibly another fight should be terrifying. But Davis, like most soldiers after their first true combat, has entered a state of numb acceptance. The worst has happened, and he has survived. Whatever comes next can be endured. Breakfast is the usual heart attack and coffee, though the coffee is weaker than normal. Supplies are running low, and what remains is being stretched thin. Around the camp, men prepare for the march with practiced efficiency, packing their meager belongings, cleaning rifles that were hastily wiped down after yesterday's fighting, checking ammunition and equipment. Captain Harrington, his wounded leg professionally bandaged but still unable to walk without assistance, has been evacuated to a field hospital against his protests. Lieutenant Parker is now formally in command of what remains of Company K-47 men out of the original 80 who began yesterday's advance. The losses are severe but not unusual for a frontal assault against prepared positions. As acting sergeant, you're responsible for ensuring your squad is ready to march. Davis, Monroe, Reynolds, and the two other men, Bennett and Wilson, look to you for guidance with the automatic deference soldiers show to anyone with perceived authority, regardless of how recently that authority was conferred. Bennett helped Reynolds with his pack. That hand's going to give him trouble. You issue instructions, calmly finding that the responsibility actually steadies your own nerves. Wilson, check everyone's ammunition. We don't know what we'll encounter today. The men comply without question, falling into the rhythm of preparation that has become second nature after months in the field. Monroe remains unusually quiet. He hasn't played his harmonica since before yesterday's battle, but he performs his duties efficiently, his face set in an expression of grim determination. Just before the regiment forms up for the march, a courier arrives with mail that had been delayed reaching the front lines. You're surprised to hear your name called and receive not one, but two letters, one from your mother and another unexpectedly from Emma, the girl from the neighboring farm. You tuck them both inside your jacket, saving them for a more private moment. Whatever news or sentiments they contain, good or bad, deserves better than a hasty reading during the confusion of breaking camp. The regiment moves out under a sky that threatens more rain, the column winding its way across the battlefield of yesterday and beyond following the Confederate retreat. The evidence of recent fighting is everywhere. Discarded equipment, hastily dug and abandoned rifle pits, occasional unburied bodies of men who fell in areas overlooked by burial details. The sights that would have horrified you months ago now register as merely notable, a measure of how the war has gradually hardened your sensibilities. Davis walks beside you, still in the position of the junior soldier, seeking protection from a veteran. Though after yesterday's charge, such distinctions feel increasingly arbitrary. Survival in combat owes as much to chance as to experience. A lesson every soldier learns eventually. I wrote to my mother last night, he says after nearly an hour of silence. Told her I was fine, that the fighting wasn't as bad as people say. He pauses, staring at the muddy road ahead. That was a lie, wasn't it? It's exactly as bad as they say. Worse, maybe. You consider your response carefully. The boy, though, after yesterday, that term seems increasingly inadequate, deserves honesty. But there's also value in maintaining the protective lies that allow soldiers to function. It's not a lie if it gives her peace, you say finally. And maybe it wasn't as bad for you as it could have been. You're still walking. He accepts this with a nod, perhaps recognizing the pragmatic truth beneath the rationalization. Many men didn't walk away from yesterday's charge. Compared to them, Davis's experience was indeed not as bad as people say. The march continues through the morning, the column moving at the deliberate pace of an army in pursuit, but not in direct contact with the enemy. By noon, scouts report that the Confederate rear guard is just 2 miles ahead, suggesting that the main rebel force has indeed established a new defensive line along the river, as intelligence had indicated. The regiment halts in a small clearing to rest and receive orders. Lieutenant Parker gathers the sergeants, including you in your acting capacity, to relay instructions from regimental command. We're to advance to this position, he explains, indicating a point on his map about a mile ahead. Establish a skirmish line and probe the Confederate defenses, but do not engage in a general action without direct orders. The main assault, if there is one, will come tomorrow after artillery has had a chance to soften their positions. The orders are received with relief by most of the sergeants. After yesterday's costly charge, the prospect of a limited engagement with the enemy is far preferable to another full-scale assault. You return to your squad and explain the situation, emphasizing that while there may be shooting, no major battle is planned for today. The regiment moves out again, advancing cautiously now that enemy contact is likely. Companies deploy into skirmish formation, spreading out to minimize casualties from artillery fire and to cover more ground as they probe for Confederate positions. Your squad forms part of this extended line. Each man about 10 yards from the next, moving forward through light woods that offer some concealment from enemy observation. The first shots come as the skirmish line emerges from the woods into open farmland. Confederate pickets positioned about 400 feet ahead fire a ragged volley before withdrawing toward their main line. No one in your immediate vicinity is hit, though you hear a cry of pain from somewhere to your left. Lieutenant Parker orders the skirmish line to continue advancing, using whatever cover the landscape provides. Shallow ditches, isolated trees, slight rises in the ground. The Confederate pickets continue falling back, offering just enough resistance to slow the Union advance without becoming decisively engaged. By mid-afternoon, the regiment has reached the position indicated in Parker's orders with a clear view of the Confederate main line, about half a mile distant. The rebel position is formidable, a natural ridge overlooking the river, reinforced with hastily constructed breastworks and with artillery pieces visible at intervals along its length. Any frontal assault would be costly, perhaps even more so than yesterday's charge. The skirmish line halts and begins to construct light defensive works of its own. Nothing elaborate, just shallow rifle pits and low barricades of fallen timber and fence rails that might provide some protection if the Confederates counterattack. It's hot, exhausting work made more difficult by the muddy ground and limited tools, but essential for survival if fighting resumes. Davis works alongside you, digging with a short-handled entrenching tool. The physical labor seems to ground him, providing a tangible task that requires no moral calculations or emotional processing. His movements are methodical and efficient, surprising in someone so recently introduced to this aspect of military life. "My father's a farmer," he explains when he notices your observation. "Been digging since I was old enough to hold a shovel." Different reasons, same motion. You nod, recognizing the value of transferable skills from civilian life. Your own experience on your family's farm has similarly prepared you for certain aspects of soldiering. The physical endurance, the ability to work in all weather conditions, the patience for repetitive tasks. It's a common thread among the regiment, which consists largely of farmers, laborers and tradesmen, rather than the professional warriors of earlier conflicts. As evening approaches, the defensive position is deemed adequate, and men begin to establish a makeshift camp. No fires are permitted this close to the enemy line, which means no hot coffee and no cooking. Dinner is cold, hard tech and salt pork washed down with water from canteens that imparts a metallic taste from long storage. With the immediate work complete and darkness falling, you finally have a moment to read your letters. You move slightly away from the others, seeking what privacy can be found in an army encampment, and carefully open the letter from your mother first. The familiar handwriting brings an immediate pang of homesickness. She writes of everyday matters, the spring planting, a neighbor's new baby, your father's plans to expand the barn. Between these mundane details, her worry for you is evident in every line, though she tries to mask it with cheerful news and questions about your welfare that she knows you'll answer with reassuring lies. The second letter from Emma is unexpected, and therefore all the more precious. Her handwriting is delicate, but clear, the words carefully chosen. She writes that she thinks of you often, that she keeps the single letter you sent before marching off to war, that she prays for your safe return. It's not a declaration of love that would be too forward for a proper young woman, but the sentiment behind the carefully composed sentences is clear enough. You read both letters twice, then carefully fold them and place them in the inner pocket of your jacket close to your heart. In the midst of wars, chaos, and brutality, these fragile connections to home and to a possible future beyond the conflict are talismans against despair. When you return to the squad's position, you find Davis has received a letter as well, delivered by a courier who came up from the rear with additional ammunition and rations. The boy's face as he reads shows a complex mixture of emotions: happiness at news from home, sadness at his separation from it, perhaps guilt at having lied about the realities of his experience. "My little sister lost her first tooth," he says, looking up from the letter, with a smile that briefly transforms him back into the youth he chronologically is. "Ma put it under her pillow and told her the tooth fairy would leave a penny, but my sister says she's too old to believe in fairies. It's such a normal domestic detail, so incongruous with your current surroundings, that it strikes you as almost comical, yet it's precisely these connections to ordinary life that help maintain sanity amid the extraordinary circumstances of war. The night settles around the regiment unusually quiet with no campfires and minimal movement to avoid drawing enemy attention. Pickets are posted at regular intervals alert for any sign of Confederate activity, while the majority of men try to rest in preparation for what tomorrow may bring. Sleep is fitful at best. The ground is hard and damp. The night air grows increasingly chilly, and the tension of being so close to the enemy line keeps nerves on edge. You drift between shallow sleep and wakeful alertness, never fully surrendering to either state. Sometime past midnight, you're roused by Monroe sitting up suddenly beside you, a strangled cry escaping his lips before he clamps his hand over his mouth. The nightmare that woke him is evident in his wide eyes and trembling hands. Without comment, you offer him your canteen, and he drinks gratefully, the simple act of swallowing seeming to ground him back in reality. "I keep seeing Miller," he whispers, naming the man from your company who died in yesterday's charge. The way he looked after the bullet hit him. He shakes his head as if trying to dislodge the image. "We joined up together, same day, same recruiting office. Known him since we were boys." You nod, understanding the particular anguish of losing someone who connects to life before the war. It's different from the grief of losing comrades met during service, carrying an additional weight of shared history and civilian identity. Try to remember him before you suggest quietly careful not to wake the others. "From home, I mean, not from yesterday." Monroe nods slowly, his breathing gradually steadying. After a while, he lies back down, though you doubt he'll sleep much more tonight. Neither will you, most likely. Some nights are simply to be endured until dawn brings the distraction of activity and duty. Morning arrives with a light fog that shrouds the landscape, limiting visibility to about 100 yards. It's both blessing and curse. The fog conceals your position from Confederate artillery observers, but also prevents your own officers from accurately assessing enemy movements and dispositions. Breakfast is more hardtack, supplemented by a precious half ration of coffee that someone has managed to prepare using a small concealed heat source that produces minimal smoke. The hot liquid is reviving after the chilly night, though the taste is weak and bitter. Lieutenant Parker moves along the line, checking positions and providing what information he has about the day's likely operations. The main Union assault, it seems, has been postponed due to the fog. Instead, skirmishers will continue to probe the Confederate line, seeking weaknesses while artillery units move into position for a bombardment once visibility improves. Your squad is assigned to maintain its current position, exchanging occasional fire with Confederate skirmishers similarly deployed ahead of their main line. It's a less intense form of combat than yesterday's charge, more a deadly game of hide and seek, with men firing from cover, then moving to new positions before enemy sharpshooters can target them. Davis adapts to this type of fighting with surprising quickness. His farm boy experiences hunting small game translate well to the careful observation and patience required of a skirmisher. By mid-morning, he's accounted for at least 2 Confederate soldiers who expose themselves too long while changing positions. It's easier when you can't see their faces, he observes during a lull in the firing. Just uniform and movement, almost like hunting deer back home. You understand what he means. The psychological distance created by picking off targets at 200 yards is vastly different from the intimate violence of yesterday's bayonet charge. The killing is still real, still final, but somehow less personally confronting. It's one of war's strange moral accommodations. The fog begins to lift by late morning, revealing the Confederate line more clearly. Union artillery, now properly positioned, opens fire on the rebel defenses. The familiar thunder of the big guns is oddly reassuring. It means that larger forces are at work, that your small part in this vast conflict is supported by the coordinated efforts of thousands of others. Confederate batteries responded, though their fire seems less coordinated and accurate than yesterday. Rumors filter down the line that the rebels are short on ammunition, that their supply lines have been disrupted, that they're preparing to withdraw across the river. No one knows if these reports are accurate, but they feed the cautious optimism that today might not require another costly infantry assault. Around noon, a courier arrives with orders and unexpectedly mail. The orders are straightforward: maintain position, continue harassment fire, prepare for a possible advance later in the day if artillery succeeds in weakening the Confederate defenses. The mail is a more welcome surprise, having somehow caught up with the regiment, despite its rapid advance from yesterday's battlefield. Among the letters is one addressed to you from a field hospital 20 miles back. Samuel's handwriting shaky but recognizable. You open it immediately. Hunger for news of your friend overriding the usual practice of saving letters for a quieter moment. Samuel's letter is brief, written during what he describes as a lucid interval between fever spikes. The pneumonia has worsened, requiring more aggressive treatment, but the hospital conditions are better than he expected. He's under the care of a contract surgeon, a civilian doctor employed by the Army, who seems both competent and caring, a rare combination in military medicine. Most importantly, Samuel has received your letter to his wife and is grateful for your efforts to reassure her. He asks that you continue to write to her if you can, as his own strength for correspondence is limited. He closes with a simple but heartfelt line. Remember your promise if things go badly, but know that I intend to rejoin you and settle my own affairs when this sickness passes. The letter brings both relief and renewed concern. Samuel is alive and receiving care, but his condition sounds precarious. Pneumonia kills more soldiers than bullets do, especially when complicated by the general debility that months of hard campaigning produces in even the strongest men. You carefully fold the letter and tuck it away, making a mental note to write to both Samuel and his wife when opportunity permits. For now, though, duty calls. Lieutenant Parker is signaling for the sergeants to gather for new instructions. The lieutenant looks tired, the strain of command evident in the lines around his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. Like most officers in the volunteer army, he's learning the difficult business of leadership on the job, making decisions that affect men's lives without the benefit of formal military education or long experience. Artillery reports good effect on the rebel defenses, Parker informs the gathered sergeants. We're to advance our skirmish line, to within 300 yards of their position, maintaining steady fire to pin down their infantry while our guns continue working. No general assault unless specifically ordered. The orders are reasonable. Advancing the skirmish line will increase pressure on the Confederates without exposing the regiment to the devastating casualties of a frontal assault against prepared positions. Still moving forward under enemy fire, even as skirmishers with the ability to use cover, carry significant risk. You return to your squad and explain the situation. No one shows particular enthusiasm for advancing closer to the Confederate line, but neither is there reluctance or fear. After yesterday's charge, this seems like a manageable task. Dangerous, but not suicidal. We'll move by teams, you explain, drawing a rough map of the ground ahead in the dirt. 2 men advance, while 3 provide covering fire, then switch. Use whatever cover you can find. Don't bunch up. Stay at least 5 yards apart. If someone gets hit, don't stop to help until the firing slackens. Everyone clear. The men nod their faces, showing the focused concentration of soldiers preparing for action. Even Davis has adopted this expression. The wide-eyed nervousness of yesterday morning, replaced by a controlled alertness that makes him look years older. The advance begins with a general increase in fire all along the Union line. Hundreds of rifles creating a continuous rolling volley that forces Confederate defenders to keep their heads down. Under this covering fire, the skirmishers begin moving forward in small groups, dashing from one position of cover to the next. Your squad advances smoothly, the men working together with practiced coordination despite never having trained specifically for this maneuver. Military necessity creates its own expertise, teaching lessons more effectively than any drill manual. The Confederate response is sporadic at first, then increasingly accurate as they recognize the threat of the advancing skirmishers. Bullets kick up dirt around you as you dash from behind a fallen log to a shallow depression that offers minimal cover. To your right, Davis slides into position beside a large rock, his rifle already coming up to his shoulder as he seeks targets along the rebel line. The advance continues yard by painful yard, each movement exposing the men to enemy fire, each new position offering temporary safety before the next dash forward. It's exhausting work physically and mentally. The constant calculation of risk, the surges of adrenaline with each exposed movement, the strain of maintaining accurate fire while under fire yourself. A cry of pain draws your attention to the left, where Reynolds has fallen clutching his leg. Bennett, his partner in the advance, hesitates momentarily, torn between continuing forward and helping his wounded comrade. "Keep moving," you shout over the din of gunfire. "I'll get him." Bennett nods and continues his advance while you work your way carefully to Reynolds' position. The wound is serious, but not immediately life-threatening. A bullet has torn through the meat of his calf, causing significant bleeding, but missing bone and major blood vessels. "Can you move if I help you?" you ask, already tearing a strip from your own shirt to use as a temporary bandage. Reynolds nods through gritted teeth, his face pale but determined. With your assistance, he begins crawling toward the rear, staying low to avoid presenting a target to Confederate marksmen. You cover his retreat with occasional shots toward the rebel line, more to discourage accurate fire than with any expectation of hitting specific targets. Once Reynolds is safely on his way to the regimental aid station, you rejoin the advance, moving up beside Davis, who has maintained steady fire throughout the incident. His face is streaked with powder residue and sweat, but his hands are steady as he reloads his rifle. Reynolds, he asks, briefly eyes, still scanning the Confederate line for targets. He'll live, you respond, settling into position and bringing your own rifle to bear. Good shot in the leg, but clean. Davis nods, seeming to accept this as relatively good news given the circumstances. The advance continues the skirmish line, gradually closing the distance to the Confederate position despite increasingly accurate rebel fire. By mid-afternoon, the Union skirmishers have reached their objective, a position approximately 300 YD from the main Confederate line. Close enough to maintain effective pressure, but far enough to avoid the worst of the defensive fire. Your squad establishes a makeshift position using a combination of natural features and hastily piled fence rails, creating just enough cover to allow relatively safe observation of the enemy position. From this vantage point, the effects of the Union artillery bombardment are clearly visible. The Confederate breastworks show significant damage in several places, and at least 2 rebel artillery pieces appear to have been disabled. More importantly, the volume of Confederate return fire has noticeably decreased over the past hour, suggesting either ammunition shortages or a reduction in manning as troops are shifted to more threatened sectors. Lieutenant Parker moves carefully along the skirmish line, gathering observation from each squad. When he reaches your position, you report what you've seen, including your assessment that the Confederate defense seems to be weakening. Same all along the line, Parker confirms. Headquarters thinks they may be preparing to withdraw across the river tonight. We're to maintain pressure but conserve ammunition. No point wasting powder if they're already leaving. The news is received with cautious optimism by your squad. If the Confederates do withdraw, it means no assault will be necessary, a welcome reprieve after yesterday's costly charge. But experience has taught all of you that the enemy is often most dangerous when appearing to retreat, sometimes turning a withdrawal into a devastating counterattack if pursued too eagerly. The remainder of the afternoon passes in a pattern of sporadic firing, interspersed with periods of watchful waiting. The Confederate fire continues to slacken, and by early evening, it's reduced to occasional shots from what appear to be a thin line of skirmishes covering the main rebel position. As darkness falls, the Union line establishes a rotation for the night watch, allowing 2-3 of the men to rest while 1/3 maintains vigilance. Your squad draws the middle watch, meaning you can sleep for a few hours before taking your turn at guard duty. You use the opportunity to write letters by the light of a carefully shielded candle. One to Samuel, expressing hope for his recovery and providing news of the regiment, and another to his wife Sarah, offering reassurance about his care and condition without minimizing the seriousness of his illness. It's a difficult balance to strike, but honesty tempered with hope seems the kindest approach. Sleep when it comes is deep. Despite the hard ground and cooling night air, the physical and mental exertion of the day's activities has left you thoroughly exhausted, able to ignore discomforts that would have kept you awake in civilian life. Davis sleeps nearby, his young face relaxed in slumber, momentarily free from the strain of maintaining adult composure under fire. Your squad's watch begins at midnight, a 4-hour shift of tense alertness, in the darkness, straining eyes and ears for any sign of Confederate movement. The night is unusually quiet. No artillery exchanges, minimal picket firing, just the occasional sound of distant movement that might be troops repositioning or might simply be the wind through trees. Dawn reveals what the night sounds had suggested. The Confederate force has indeed withdrawn across the river, leaving only a token rear guard that quickly retreats when Union skirmishers advance. The formidable position that might have cost thousands of lives to take by assault has been abandoned for strategic reasons known only to the Confederate High Command. The regiment moves forward cautiously, wary of traps or ambushes, but finds only the detritus of a hastily abandoned camp. Discarded equipment too heavy to carry in retreat. Cooking fires still warm, even the occasional personal item that speaks to the humanity of the enemy. A daguerreotype of a woman and child, a small worn Bible, a carefully preserved letter from home. Looking at these abandoned possessions, you're struck by the strange intimacy of war. How it brings men to kill other men with whom they might, in different circumstances, have shared a meal or swapped stories of home. Davis seems similarly affected, handling a found Confederate haversack with the same care he might show for a Union soldier's belongings. "They're just like us, aren't they?" he says, quietly examining a crude wooden spoon carved from a tree branch. Some rebel soldiers attempt to create a small comfort amid hardship. Same hopes, same fears, just wearing different uniforms. It's a simple observation, but a profound one, particularly coming from someone who, 24 hours ago, was efficiently shooting at those same men from 300 yards. The ability to see the enemy as fully human while still performing the duties of a soldier is a complex moral position that many never achieve. As the regiment secures the abandoned Confederate position orders arrive from division headquarters, you are to remain in place for 24 hours, resting and resupplying before continuing the pursuit of the retreating Confederate force. After the intensity of the past 2 days, the prospect of even a brief respite is welcome news. The day unfolds with a relaxed routine that feels almost luxurious after the constant tension of combat operations. Proper meals are prepared as supply wagons catch up with the advancing regiment. Mail is distributed, including newspapers that, though weeks old, provide a welcome connection to the wider world beyond the immediate military sphere. Men wash in the river, do laundry men clothing, write letters home, and engage in the hundreds small tasks of personal maintenance that get neglected during active operations. You use the opportunity to check on Reynolds, now in a proper field hospital established in a farmhouse behind the Union line. His wound is clean and properly bandaged. The prognosis good for full recovery, though he'll likely be sent to a general hospital for convalescence. He seems in good spirits, already planning his return to the company, despite the surgeon's estimate of at least 6 weeks recovery time. Returning to the regiment's position, you find Davis engaged in a makeshift baseball game that has sprung up in a flat area near the river. The boy, who seemed to age years during the recent fighting, is momentarily visible again, laughing as he rounds an improvised base made from a discarded havoc. It's a reminder that despite their experiences, many of these soldiers are still essentially youths, able to find joy in simple pleasures during the brief intervals between war's horrors. The day passes peacefully in evening campfires, burning openly now that there's no immediate enemy presence to observe them. Around these fires, men engage in the timeless activities of soldiers, at rest playing cards, telling stories, singing songs that speak of home and love and loss. Monroe has finally taken out his harmonica again. The sweet notes of Lena drifting across the encampment as darkness falls completely. You sit with your squad watching the firelight play across faces that have become as familiar as family over months of shared hardship. Whatever tomorrow brings, another march, another battle, another test of courage and endurance. Tonight there is food, rest, and the comfort of comradeship. In war, such moments of relative peace are treasures to be savored, memories to sustain the spirit through whatever challenges lie ahead. Morning arrives with thin sunlight filtering through a layer of high clouds, casting a soft, diffuse light over the encampment. The 24 hours of rest ordered by division headquarters is coming to an end, and the regiment prepares to resume its pursuit of the retreating Confederate force. There's a different energy in the camp today. The men are rested, fed, and cleaned by military standards, their spirits lifted by the brief respite and the enemy's withdrawal. You wake feeling more refreshed than you have in weeks. The combination of adequate sleep, hot food, and the absence of immediate danger having worked a kind of temporary magic on body and mind. Beside you, Davis is already up, meticulously packing his knapsack with the increased efficiency that comes from months of practice. Mail call before we move out, he informs you, noticing you're awake. Wilson heard it from the company clerk. Might be news from Samuel. The mention of Samuel sends a brief pang through your chest. It's been several days since his letter from the field hospital, and pneumonia can take sudden turns for the worse. You've seen strong men carried off by illness within days, their bodies unable to fight both infection and the accumulated hardships of military life. Breakfast is luxurious by campaign standards. Fresh bread brought up by the supply wagons, salt pork fried rather than eaten cold, and coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, as the veterans joke. Around the cooking fires, conversation flows easily, the men discussing everything from home news to speculation about where the Confederate force is heading, to good-natured debates about which company has the worst cook. Lieutenant Parker moves through the camp, checking preparations for the march with the increased confidence of someone growing into his command role. When he reaches your position, he pauses, a folded paper in his hand. Orders came through this morning, he says, addressing you directly. Your field promotion to sergeant is confirmed. It's not just acting anymore. He hands you the paper, an official document with the regimental colonel's signature, formalizing your new rank and the modest increase in pay that accompanies it. You accept it with a mixture of pride and uncertainty. Promotion means recognition of your abilities, but it also means increased responsibility for the lives of the men under your command. It's a weight that sits differently than the simple burden of combat, requiring moral courage as much as physical bravery. Congratulations, Sergeant, Davis says with a genuine smile when Parker has moved on. The others in your squad offer similar sentiments, their expressions showing no resentment at your elevation, just acceptance and perhaps relief that the position has gone to someone they trust. Mail call comes as promised, the company clerk distributing letters in small packages to eager recipients. Your name is called twice, a letter from home, and more surprisingly, one from the General Hospital where Samuel was sent. You open the second one first, heart pounding with apprehension. The letter isn't from Samuel himself, but from a hospital steward writing on his behalf. The news is mixed. Samuel's condition worsened significantly after reaching the General Hospital, the pneumonia developing complications that nearly claimed his life. But the crisis has passed, the steward writes, and the doctors now expect a slow but steady recovery. Samuel is too weak to write himself, but dictated a brief message. Tell the boys I'm too orrery to die. We'll rejoin when able, but maybe sometime. Remember your promise about Sarah if needed. Relief washes through you. Samuel alive, likely to recover, though clearly still in serious condition. You'll write to Sarah today, sharing the cautiously good news, while preparing her for the likelihood of a long convalescence. The promise Samuel references is your agreement to help his family if he doesn't return. A common arrangement among soldiers, another thread in the web of mutual support that helps make the unbearable bearable. The letter from home contains family news updates on the farm community happenings, the ordinary details of civilian life that seem increasingly distant from your current reality. Your mother mentions that Emma asks about you whenever their families meet at church, her interest apparently becoming noticeable enough to prompt gentle teasing from your siblings. The thought brings a smile to your face and a momentary warmth that pushes back against the pervasive uncertainty of military life. The regiment forms up mid-morning, companies falling into marching order with practiced efficiency. Your company is assigned to the vanguard today, the leading element of the column responsible for first contact if the enemy is encountered. It's a position of honor, but also of increased danger, requiring constant vigilance rather than the relative mindlessness of marching in the middle of a long column. As acting sergeant now confirmed, Sergeant, you position your squad accordingly, placing the most experienced men at key points and keeping Davis near you, where his growing but still incomplete battlefield awareness can be supplemented by your own. The boy no longer seems like the frightened youth who joined your tent after Samuel's evacuation. His posture, movements, and expressions all reflect the accelerated maturation that combat forces upon the survivors. The march begins at a deliberate pace, the column winding along a road that parallels the river where the Confederate force reportedly crossed. The day is pleasantly cool, the high clouds providing relief from what might otherwise be oppressive summer heat. Under different circumstances, it might be a pleasant country walk, rather than a military movement in pursuit of an armed enemy. By midday, scouts report that the Confederate rear guard has been spotted about 3 miles ahead, defending a crucial crossroads that the main rebel force passed through during the night. The regiment halts temporarily while officers consult maps and discuss approach options, then resumes its advance with increased caution. Your company deploys from marching column into a more dispersed formation, ready to respond quickly if contact occurs. The men move with the focused alertness that becomes second nature after sufficient combat experience. Eyes constantly scanning the landscape, ears are tuned to any sound that doesn't belong, muscles ready to react to threats from any direction. The first shot comes just after the column rounds a bend in the road, revealing the crossroads about half a mile distant. A puff of white smoke appears from a cluster of trees to the right, followed seconds later by the crack of a rifle. The bullet passes harmlessly overhead, but its message is clear. The enemy is present and prepared to contest your advance. Lieutenant Parker orders the company to deploy as skirmishers, spreading out to minimize vulnerability to enemy fire while advancing toward the Confederate position. Your squad takes position on the right flank using a shallow drainage ditch that runs parallel to the road as partial cover. What follows is not a major battle, but the kind of limited engagement that characterized much of the war's daily reality. Brief, intense exchanges of fire between relatively small units, each seeking advantage through maneuver and marksmanship rather than overwhelming force. For the men involved, however, the danger is just as real as in the largest set-piece battles. Each bullet equally lethal, regardless of the engagement's strategic significance. Your squad advances by bounds, 2 men moving forward while the others provide covering fire, then switching roles. It's hot, exhausting work requiring constant communication and coordination. Davis performs well, his movements becoming more fluid and confident with each successful advance. Whatever innocence he arrived with has been replaced by a competence that will serve him well if he survives to return home. The skirmish continues for nearly an hour, a dance of advance and retreat as the Union force gradually pushes the Confederate rear guard back from their defensive position. Casualties are minimal on both sides. 2 men wounded in your company, none in your immediate squad with similar light losses visible among the retreating rebels. By late afternoon, the Confederate force abandons the crossroads, entirely withdrawing at a pace that suggests their main body is now safely beyond immediate pursuit. The regiment secures the position but does not continue the chase, having reached its assigned objective for the day. Tomorrow will bring new orders, perhaps another march, perhaps a more significant engagement if the Confederate force decides to make a stand rather than continue its retreat. Camp is established with the efficiency of long-practice tents, rising in orderly rows, pickets posted at appropriate intervals, cooking fires built within designated areas. The routine of military life reasserts itself after the brief disruption of combat. Men falling into the familiar patterns of evening activities, cleaning weapons, preparing meals, tending minor injuries, writing letters home. You check on the 2 wounded men from your company before seeing to your own squad's needs. Both have relatively minor injuries. One, a bullet graze along the ribs that looks worse than it is. The other, a fragment wound to the arm from a shattered tree branch. Neither will require evacuation to a field hospital, though both will need a few days of lighter duty while they heal. Returning to your squad's position, you find Monroe playing his harmonica softly while the others engage in various evening tasks. The music drifts across the camp, a poignant counterpoint to the metallic sounds of ramrods and rifle barrels, and the low murmur of conversations around dozens of small fires. It's a moment of simple beauty amid circumstances that offer few such respites, and you pause to appreciate it before addressing the necessary preparations for tomorrow. Sergeant Davis approaches, interrupting your brief reverie. Found these while securing the crossroads. He holds out a small packet of letters bound with a faded ribbon, Clearly personal correspondence from some Confederate soldier's pocket or knapsack accidentally left behind in the hasty retreat. You take the packet, weighing it thoughtfully in your hand. By rights, any abandoned enemy materials should be turned over to regimental headquarters for potential intelligence value. But these are obviously private letters, likely from family to a rebel soldier, containing no military information, but immense personal significance to someone now unable to retrieve them. After a moment's consideration, you hand the packet back to Davies. Put them somewhere they might be found if he comes back looking, you say quietly. Under that large rock by the crossroads sign would work. Davis nods, understanding the decision without need for explanation. It's a small gesture of humanity in a conflict that increasingly strips away such considerations, a recognition that some bonds like those between a soldier and his family transcend the arbitrary divisions of war. The evening deepens into night stars appearing in a sky now cleared of clouds. Your squad gathers around a small fire, sharing coffee and conversation in the way of soldiers who have faced danger together and emerge intact. The talk ranges widely. Memories of home, speculation about the war's progress, stories from civilian lives that seem increasingly distant with each passing month in uniform. My father fought in Mexico, Bennett offers during a lull in the conversation. Used to tell stories about it when I was a boy. Never mentioned this part, though. What part? Asks Wilson, stirring the fire with a stick. The waiting, the marching, the days where nothing happens except blisters and bad food. Bennett shrugs. His stories were all battles and glory. Nothing about sore feet and dysentery. The observation prompts knowing chuckles from around the fire. It's a common experience, the gap between civilian perceptions of war, shaped by newspapers and veterans' edited reminiscences, and the lived reality of military service, where heroic moments are islands in an ocean of mundane hardship. Think anyone will want to hear our stories when we get back? Davis asks, his young face serious in the firelight. The real ones, I mean, not just the exciting parts. The question hangs in the air, touching on concerns that many soldiers share, but few articulate. How to bridge the experiential divide between those who have lived through combat and those who know war only through sanitized accounts. How to speak truthfully about experiences that seem unspeakable. How to return to communities that expect heroes and may not recognize the complex, changed individuals who come home. Some will want to know, you say finally, family, close friends, people who care more about us than about having exciting stories to repeat. You pause, considering your own eventual return to the farm in Ohio, to parents who have never seen combat. To Emma, who knows you only as you were before the war. The rest, they'll get the stories they expect. Easier that way for everyone. The conversation shifts to lighter topics as the night advances, but Davis's question lingers in your thoughts. The gulf between soldier and civilian grows wider with each day in the field, each skirmish, each night spent on hard ground far from home. Bridging that distance upon return will require its own kind of courage, different from but perhaps no less demanding than battlefield bravery. As the fire burns down to embers, men begin retiring to their tents, exhaustion claiming them despite the relatively light physical demands of the day. Combat, Even brief skirmishing like today's engagement depletes energy in ways that far exceed its apparent physical exertion. The constant vigilance, the sustained focus, the emotional control required to function effectively under threat all extract their toll. You remain by the fire a while longer, using the solitude to compose a letter to Samuel's wife Sarah. Finding the right balance between honesty and comfort is challenging, but you settle on a straightforward account of his condition, as reported by the hospital steward, emphasizing the doctor's optimism while acknowledging the severity of his illness. You add personal observations about his strength of character and determination qualities that have served him well in military life and will aid his recovery. The letter complete. You sit back watching the last flames flicker among the coals. Tomorrow will bring whatever it brings. Another march, another skirmish, perhaps a major battle if the Confederate force decides to make a stand. Or perhaps something entirely unexpected. War being the realm of chance and chaos, despite all attempts at planning and prediction. For tonight, though, there is the simple fact of survival. You have lived through another day of war, as have the men under your care. It's a modest victory, but not an insignificant one, in a conflict where disease accident and enemy action claim lives with capricious regularity. Each sunset reached intact is a small triumph against the statistics of mortality. Davis emerges from the tent, moving to sit beside you at the dying fire. His expression is thoughtful, his movements carrying the slight stiffness that comes from muscles unused to the day's exertions, despite months of military service. "Do you think it will end soon?" he asks, not looking at you, but staring into the embers. "The war?" I mean, it's a question every soldier asks eventually. Usually in these quiet moments when immediate survival is not at stake and the mind can contemplate larger patterns. The answer is never satisfying. "I don't know," you reply honestly. "Feels different now than it did last year, but that doesn't mean it's nearly over." He nods, accepting the uncertainty. "My enlistment's up in 4 months. Been thinking about whether to re-enlist or go home." The statement surprises you. Despite his rapid adaptation to military life, you've assumed Davis would return to civilian life at the first opportunity. Reclaiming the normal progression from youth to adulthood that war has interrupted, that he's considering remaining in service, suggests changes deeper than the obvious physical maturation and combat competence. "What's pulling you each way?" you ask, genuinely curious about his reasoning. He considers the question carefully before answering. "Home as well. It's home, family, the farm, a future that makes sense." He pauses, searching for words, but it feels like leaving a job, half you know, and the men here. He gestures vaguely toward the surrounding tents. "It's different from any other kind of friendship. Don't know if I could explain it to people back home." You understand precisely what he means. The bonds formed among soldiers transcend ordinary friendship, forged in shared danger and mutual dependence that civilian life rarely demands. It's a connection that many veterans find impossible to replicate after returning home, leading some to maintain lifelong associations with former comrades while struggling to form equally meaningful relationships with those who haven't shared their experiences. Whatever you decide, you tell him, make it your choice. Not what you think your family expects or what the regiment needs or what sounds most noble, just what you can live with when you look back years from now. He nods again, seemingly satisfied with the advice. What about you? Your 3 years must be nearly up too. The question turns your thoughts to your own eventual decision. Your enlistment has 11 months remaining. Nearly a year of war still to endure before facing the choice Davis now contemplates. Home pulls strongly. The farm, your family, the possibility of a future with Emma if her interest proves durable. Yet the regiment has become a second family. The men around you as close as brothers in many ways. Haven't decided, you admit. Ask me in 11 months after I've seen how the war develops. The conversation lulls into comfortable silence, both of you watching the last embers fade to ash. Around the camp, similar scenes play out. Men in quiet conversation or solitary reflection, processing the day's events, contemplating uncertain futures, finding what peace is possible amid circumstances designed to deny it. Eventually, exhaustion claims you, both sending you to the relative comfort of the tent where sleep comes quickly, despite the hard ground beneath your blanket. Your dreams are a confused mixture of home and war plowing fields that turn to battlefields, familiar farm buildings transforming into military encampments, family members appearing among your squad. It's neither nightmare nor pleasant dream, simply the mind's attempt to reconcile the disparate realities that now comprise your existence. Morning arrives with familiar sounds. The bugle's call, the rustle of men emerging from tents, the clatter of equipment being gathered for another day's march. The routine of military life continues, each day building upon the last. The war's progress measured in miles advance. Positions secured, casualties sustained and inflicted. But beneath this surface continuity, subtle changes accumulate. Davis moves with increased confidence, his questions more practical than fearful. Monroe plays his harmonica more frequently, finding solace in music when words fail. Bennett and Wilson have developed an unspoken coordination, each anticipating the other's movements during skirmish deployments. And you feel the weight of sergeant stripes on your sleeve. Not just the physical fabric, but the responsibility they represent for lives entrusted to your leadership. These incremental adaptations multiplied across thousands of men in hundreds of regiments form the true story of the Civil War soldier's experience. Not just the dramatic moments of charge and countercharge, victory and defeat, but the daily endurance of hardship, the formation of bonds that transcend civilian understanding, the gradual transformation from citizen to soldier, and for the fortunate, eventually back to citizen again. As the regiment forms up for the day's march, you take your position at the head of your squad, checking equipment and alignment with practiced efficiency. The road stretches ahead, leading toward whatever engagement or encampment the day will bring. Behind lies yesterday's crossroads, one small point on a map of conflict that spans a continent, and somewhere beyond the horizon waits home, a place both unchanging and irrevocably altered by your absence. Just as you have been changed by experiences that those who remain behind can never fully comprehend. The drums begin their cadence and the column lurches into motion. Left foot, right foot. The eternal rhythm of the infantry marking time toward an end that remains beyond sight but must eventually arrive. Until then, there is only the next step, The next mile, the next day of a Civil War soldier's life endured with grim determination, occasional humor, rare moments of beauty, and the sustaining knowledge that you do not walk alone. And perhaps that in the end is what defines the Civil War soldier's experience most essentially. Not the politics that divided a nation, not the strategies that generals plotted on maps, not even the courage displayed in desperate moments of combat. Rather, it is the discovery that human connection persists even in wars in humanity. That brotherhood can be found amid brutality, that moments of grace appear in the most graceless circumstances. Left foot, right foot, the march continues carrying you and thousands like you through history's bloodiest chapter on American soil. Some will fall along the way their journey ended by bullet or disease. Others will return home forever changed, carrying memories that shaped their remaining days. All are united by having lived the answer to the question, what was it like to be a Civil War soldier? It was hardship and camaraderie, boredom and terror, mundane routine, and extraordinary sacrifice. It was feet blistered from endless marching and hands calloused from digging countless rifle pits. It was the taste of hardtack softened in coffee and the smell of gunpowder that lingered in uniforms for days after battle. It was letters from home read by firelight and final messages dictated to strangers in field hospitals. It was everything human experience encompasses, compressed and intensified by the proximity of death and the forge of shared adversity. As the regiment disappears around a bend in the road, the dust of its passing settling on empty fields, we leave our unnamed sergeant and his squad to continue their journey. Their war will eventually end, as all wars must. Some will survive to tell their stories. Others will become names carved on stones or fading entries in regimental logs. But in this moment, they march together under the summer sun, their individual fate still unwritten, their collective experience forming one small thread in the complex tapestry of a nation's most defining conflict. The road stretches onward, and the soldiers follow step by step into history. When we consider the Civil War today, we often focus on the grand movements of armies, the political machinations of leaders, or the social transformations that followed emancipation. These perspectives are valid and important, but to truly understand this pivotal chapter in American history, we must also remember the individual men who lived it day by day, not as historical figures, but as human beings who ate and slept, laughed and wept, feared and hoped, and ultimately shaped a nation's destiny through their collective endurance. Their legacy lives on, not just in monuments and textbooks, but in the very fabric of American identity. A reminder that our nation was tested by fire, and those scarred emerged intact through the courage and sacrifice of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. As you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you might spare a thought for those long ago soldiers, blue and gray alike, who once lay beneath the same stars that now shine over your home. Their dreams not so different from your own, despite the vast distance of time and experience that separates you from them. In remembering them, we honor not just their service, but our shared humanity, the enduring connection that binds us across generations, to those who came before and those who will follow. All of us participants in the continuing story of a nation still striving to fulfill its promise of freedom and justice for all,